Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, Nomad Flair here. Today I'll be reviewing the Trimui Smart Pro. This is a retro gaming handheld console which resembles the 4-button layout of the Nintendo Switch and the overall appearance of the PlayStation Vita. As always, this review will be non-biased and will cover the pros and cons I've noticed when using the Trimui Smart Pro. So, could this be the retro device for you? Let's find out. Let's start with the specs. The Trimui Smart Pro utilizes an all-winner A133 Plus with a Cortex A53 quad-core processor clocked at 1.8 GHz CPU. Accompanying this is a PowerVR G8300 GPU clocked at 660 MHz. This also includes a 1GB LPDDR4X RAM. This handheld includes 256 GB of storage and 8 GB of internal eMMC storage. This also includes built-in Wi-Fi 5 and the operating system it's using is Linux. Lastly, the Trimui contains a 5000 mAh battery which will give you around 5 hours of game time. But of course, this entirely depends on which games you are playing. Playing 2D games will last longer, whilst the higher-end 3D games will drain the battery much faster. The Trimui Smart Pro is presented in a sleek box that resembles that of an iPhone. Once opened, you are greeted with the memory card, if you did opt for one, and the instructions manual right underneath that. Below this is the handheld itself with a screen protector that's already attached, followed by the USB-A to USB-C charging cable. One of the best and noticeable selling points of the Trimui Smart Pro is its display. It features a 4.96-inch fully laminated IPS screen with a 16:9 aspect ratio. Based on my experience with this so far, the screen quality and resolution is excellent, running at 720p. Text and images on the screen are clear and easy to read with a touch of vibrance and sharpness, making the gaming visual experience really enjoyable on all systems. The Trimui Smart Pro is available in 3 different colorways. This includes black, which I currently own, white and retro grey. You also have the choice to purchase the handheld as a standalone with no games, costing you $80, or with an SD card at 64, 128 or 256 GB, each including pre-installed games. This will go up to a total of $120 depending on which option you opt in for. Mech DIY also offers various storage cases for your handheld consoles at $13, so it's worth checking out, especially if you game when traveling or commuting to different places. Lastly, at the time of making this video, Mech DIY are offering 50% off on all purchases. As you can see, the Trimui has gone for a PS Vita-like layout, which I do really like. This includes a clicky D-pad, which really feels nice and responsive, and horizontal to that is the XYBA button layout, which I've seen on the Nintendo Switch. The buttons are also very clicky. Here we have 2 analog sticks, each surrounded by an LED RGB ring light. This randomly changes color when playing, improving the overall aesthetic of the console. However, you don't have the option to choose which color to display, it automatically does this by itself. I have a love and hate relationship with the analog sticks. I like the positioning of them on the Trimui, and I'm a fan of the soft rubber top for comfortability. However, the joysticks are very short and almost flush with the device, decreasing the range of movement. This lack of motion and functionality does mildly hamper the gaming experience on some games. Games that don't require the joysticks don't experience this issue at all. We have 3 more buttons on the front. This includes the menu button on the left and the select and start button positioned closely to each other, followed by the 2 speakers at the front and the Trimui logo. The top of the Trimui has a similar layout to the Nintendo Switch, but it doesn't compare when it comes to button quality. The R1 and L1 buttons are a good size and sound clicky when pressed. On the other hand, the R2 and L2 buttons are a bit too small for my liking. They definitely should have been bigger like that on the Nintendo Switch to make them more comfortable when pressed. Lastly, we have the volume buttons, a USB port and a power button, which has a built-in sleep functionality, which I'm a big fan of. When pressed once, the device goes to sleep, and when pressed again, you can resume from where you left off from. At the bottom of the handheld are 2 small holes to place a strap through it. An FN slide button. When slid to the right, this will disable the RGB ring lights and a few other settings, more on that later on. To the right is a charging port, a microphone hole, SD card slot, and then a 3.5mm headphone port. The Trimui casing is made out of plastic and feels very light in the hands. I was really surprised to know that it only weighs 250 grams. Of course, I'm not complaining. Despite its lightness, the plastic is durable and can take a few knocks. The ergonomics of the Trimui in the hands feel really good and natural. When you switch on the Trimui, you are presented with the branding and then the ring lights light up. At the top there are several tabs. Your favorite games are saved here, followed by the most recent games you've played, and then the best tab contains a collection of games that are already placed into folders. This consists of arcade vertical shooter games, which allows you to play around 180 games vertically. This feature is very cool and the games are a ton of fun to play. Then cartridges that contain multiple games, and lastly, pretty much every retro gamer favorite, a large collection of Pokemon games. Pressing R1 will present you with all the available gaming systems. More on that in a moment. I'd like to go over the app tab quickly. This app allows us to customize a few settings under the functions button. This includes switching on and off the RGB lights, the silent mode, and enabling a power saving mode to prolong the battery life, and boosting performance mode. Sliding the functions button will allow you to enable or disable the selected settings as a whole. Then you can check the USB storage, play the game 2048, read the user manual guide, and launch RetroArch. Playing online is an option through NetPlay. Then we have the settings tab. The display settings allows you to adjust the screen brightness, switch on and off the LED lights, also adjust the LED brightness, and lastly to lock the screen when you're away from the handheld to save battery. We also have the volume settings, which can be increased or decreased through here or just by pressing the buttons at the top of the console. We also have BGM settings and rumble intensity. Here you can set up Wi-Fi or even set up a hotspot. You also have the option to select different themes. At the moment, this is the only theme that's available, which I'm currently rocking. The rest are not functional. Another cool setting is being able to map your own keys. Personally, I just use the default as it works perfectly for me. And here we have the system settings. Through here we can power off the system or by long pressing the power button at the top. We can also change the device language, enable or disable NetPlay, refresh your ROMs, change the date and time, factory reset device, a hardware test, calibrate the joysticks, flash modes, and device info. Here you can find which Linux version you are running and if there is a new update available which needs to be carried out. In order to do this, head over to the Trimui website to see if there's any new available updates. If so, this procedure can be complicated for those that are non-tech savvy individuals. Unfortunately, software updates are not done over the built-in Wi-Fi. Instead, this process requires removing the SD card and downloading the firmware from the website, reinserting the card, holding certain buttons down, etc, etc. The complexity of this may be a drawback for some gamers. Heading back to the Games tab, these are all the available systems that you can play on. Each system has several games that you can play. Instead of scrolling all the way down trying to find a game, you can manually search for it by pressing the menu button. And you also have the option to add games to the favorite tab for easy future access. It also would have been nice if all the games featured an image on the side to give you an insight of what it is, as some games are missing this. But this isn't a big issue for me because at the end of the day, these games are ROMs. Before we try out games from various systems, I do want to mention that you can download your own ROMs onto the SD cards. You're not limited to just the pre-installed games, which is great. Now I'll be showcasing some gameplay from the most common systems that most gamers are aware of. When playing Game Boy games, you'll notice retro art bezels pop up on the side, which really adds to the retro experience. I do really like this, as you're not getting purely black bezels. The audio coming out from the speakers sound really good, and they can get as loud as you like, as you can hear. The games on the system run smoothly and look really, really good. You also get the same with the Game Boy Color and the Advance. All games run really well and sound crisp. With the Nintendo DS, I just wish that the games took up the entire screen. Because of the split screen, it did make it a bit difficult to actually focus on the games whilst playing, even if the game is switched from horizontal to vertical. Despite that, all systems showcased so far had no performance issues and worked as intended. Now moving on to the more demanding consoles like the N64, Dreamcast, PS1 and PSP. In terms of performance, the Trimui Smart Pro handles most games quite well. Systems like the Dreamcast, PSP and Nintendo 64 run smoothly. In particular, PSP games perform exceptionally well, which is great considering that the device's design is inspired by Sony. Games from the Dreamcast and N64 era also run impressively, with titles like Super Smash Bros., Mario 64, Mario Kart, etc.
Nice hook lands for Ali. We're 10 seconds out.
So it's known that God of War on the PSP is really known to drain the GPU on most handheld emulators out there. On the Trimui, I didn't notice any major issues, just a few jitters here and there, and the occasional drop in frame rate, which is expected. However, the gameplay is certainly playable and enjoyable from my experience. Overall, playing games on the more demanding consoles worked really well unexpectedly. Initially, I thought it would struggle, especially with the PSP and the PS1, but to my surprise, the games work seamlessly. So, a quick summary of the pros and the cons of the Trimui Smart Pro. There are several strengths worth highlighting. One of its best features is the large 5-inch IPS screen. The quality is excellent and the 16:9 aspect ratio makes playing PSP games enjoyable. The PS Vita controller layout is definitely a win for me. The feel and responsiveness of the D-pad and the buttons feel great when pressed. The cool RGB ring lights is an excellent addition to improving the overall aesthetics of the Trimui. The overall performance exceeded my expectations for a device that's under $100. Great audio quality that sounds crisp and that can get very loud. And also, you have the option to use a headphone jack. Having a large catalogue of games that can be played vertically, which is really cool and something that we don't usually see with other gaming handhelds. Lastly, having pre-installed games that run really well is a huge win for me, as I don't need to go and start downloading hundreds of games, which will take forever. So moving on to the cons. Updating the Trimui Smart Pro isn't straightforward. The Trimui should have made use of its built-in Wi-Fi 5 and allow updates to happen over Wi-Fi. The L2 and R2 triggers are too small. They definitely should have been bigger, like down the Nintendo Switch. The joystick should have been a little longer, giving it a great range of motion. Not all games feature box art to show you what the game is or how it potentially looks like. So guys, will you be picking up the Trimui Smart Pro? Let me know down in the comments section below. Also, if you did make it to the end of the video, you're awesome. Leave a comment stating Smart Pro and I'll be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you are planning to pick up the Smart Pro, you can get this from Mech DIY using the link in the description. I highly recommend you pick this up with an SD card, as this will come with an endless amount of pre-installed games, saving you a ton of time. If you are a content creator like me and you're looking for awesome music to put into your videos, then I highly recommend you check out Audio. Audio has a vast library of music, sound effects and AI to help you find the best possible music. Use the affiliate link down below for 70% off your first year. Okay guys, I hope you found today's video to be useful. I would appreciate if you could leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you're into tech and gaming. And until next time everyone, take care.